Thanks to Charm Diamond Centers, the Canadian Love Map podcast has been sharing the stories that shape us for 10 seasons. Tales of romance, resilience, family, friendship, and community from every corner of Canada. This is Charm's Canadian Love Map. Alison McGill, welcome to the Canadian Love Map.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Can you hear the wedding bells ringing?
They're always ringing in my life. How are you, Nancy?
Some people have ringing in their ears, but you have wedding bells all the time.
I do.
How did you come to be a wedding expert?
Well, like most great journalists, I just went to journalism school and found myself landing in a space of wedding media. I was in fashion and beauty before that. And then I became the editor-in-chief of Wedding Bells, which was Canada's wedding authority. And I did that for a very long time. So I honestly landed in it not because of any other reason that I was a journalist, and it was an interesting opportunity and it was an amazing opportunity. And getting into that business, it is something that the content was always happy. It was joyful. It was beautiful. It was fashionable. We talk about travel. We talk about love. We talk about gems. We talk about all of these pretty beautiful things. It's a pretty great gig.
It is a pretty bright gig, isn't it?
It is.
You're not usually looking at the dark like a divorce lawyer might be.
Absolutely not.
The dark side of weddings. What do you remember of your childhood impressions of weddings?
Childhood impressions of weddings, that's interesting. My parents were, I think maybe beyond high school sweethearts. They started dating, when they were 13 and 15. So my parents got married when they were in their 20s, which was quite young. And so that was my first impression of weddings, obviously, was looking at their photos. Mm-hmm. And my parents always just had this amazing relationship and energy between them. And it was something that was, it really set the bar for me in terms of, what I thought marriage and romance and all of that sort of looked like. Like my parents were very loving people and they had an amazing relationship together and they were very much a team in everything that they did. So that really sort of shaped a lot about how I thought about relationships and marriage. And they didn't have a huge splashy wedding. They were private people. So for the time they had like a nice sized wedding, but it was small and it was very them.
It was very them. What are the memories you have of looking at the photos of their wedding? What sticks out for you?
Well, it's kind of funny that you asked me that because the photography from the wedding stands out because this is something my mother always particularly made note of. They had a photographer for the wedding who was a family friend and lovely man, but didn't really capture the moment. So funny enough, there's not a ton of photos of my parents together. So that is a real takeaway from that wedding. My mom always joked that we should have a redo on that just for the photos. But, their wedding was like they were married in the 60s. They had a very sort of, classic, almost kind of kitschy. My mom had the beehive. Her wedding dress was beautiful. It was simple. But the photography from their wedding is really something that's funny. And everybody that segues to talking about, I hate when I hear people have regrets. I don't like regrets in life, period. But wedding seems to be something that a lot of people say, I wish I had of insert whatever that is. Mm-hmm. I think that's getting a little less now because a lot of people have planners. We have social media. There's a lot more thought put into things. So people don't necessarily sort of have regrets, but that's something that can happen. And it's just something that over the years, my mom, she never let it go. And I don't blame her.
I don't blame her either. I picture all these photos of her with other people and your dad with other people.
That's right. They're sort of from a distance. There's lots of the receiving line shot because that was very much the thing back then. So there's lots of people. There's all the families captured, but maybe it was predating sort of the candid moments, if you will. But yeah, there's maybe a handful of photos of them together, which is kind of funny looking back on it. But at the time, it obviously was a sore point because I heard about it from a very early age.
The good news is the relationship thrived just the same.
Absolutely did.
Right. It wasn't an age where they were doing selfies and it wasn't so much about broadcasting to the world how they were, but I can understand why she would have liked to have been able to look back on pictures of the two of them. When you went into journalism school, did you have any inkling that you would end up in the realm of love?
Zero inkling. It's just the way that the road took me, and like what a amazing path that it paved for me. It's an incredible industry, full of really creative, interesting people. I love that it really touches on all the things that I had mentioned. There's the fashion component, there's the travel, there's the lifestyle, and there's the emotional component, which is a huge one. And sharing people's stories and helping them sort of get into the zone for that day. I always like, as I said, I don't like to hear regrets and negativity. And I think that, weddings can sometimes, well, a lot of the time they come with a lot of negative connotations to them because it's the family gets involved and it's not necessarily always an easy thing. It can be messy. But trying to navigate that's not simple. I understand that, but it's trying to find, your balance in that and remember that it's about you. It's about two people.
So you were with a wedding magazine for almost 20 years. What
Yes.
did you learn during that time, and how did your views of weddings and marriage shift?
It's interesting because I'll tell you that when I got married, which was in 2009, I had the smallest wedding possible. I had what would be called a micro wedding now. So it was just my husband and I and my parents. And that was exactly the wedding that we wanted. That was who we were. That was, it just spoke to us. That is what was right and felt right for us. And it was an amazing day. We had a wonderful day, but everybody had this, sort of shock reaction because it was also a surprise wedding. Didn't tell anybody about it. So when it happened, it was, an interesting narrative because people would say, but you're an editor of a wedding magazine. And I said, yes, but this was my perfect wedding. So it really comes down to, it's all about what you want as a person. And really sticking with that. And, personally, that was something that I learned in my journey. I mean, and a lot of things have changed since 2009. Oh my goodness. Weddings have really exploded. Social media took them into a place we could have never imagined. Mm-hmm. And, there's a lot of pressure now for people. They feel having weddings, having a viral wedding is a big thing for some people.
Wait, I'm going to stop you there. What is a viral wedding? Is that when everyone gets a cold? No, just kidding.
No, not that one. That's a different kind of viral wedding. The viral wedding is exactly that, like going viral on social media with your wedding. So, a lot of people have a goal of that. And, we can get so much to talk about, Nancy. We can get into talking about like people hire content creators now for their weddings. So they have every moment covered so they can have that viral wedding day. I mean, it's that's what I'm saying. Social media has really taken weddings to a level that, were unimaginable.
So is it more performance art than love in action?
Can be. Mm-hmm. I hate to say that. I hope it's not. I hope there's performance art with heart. Mm-hmm. That is what it should be. There's lots of things that, whether it's a fashion story, whether it's like an insane cake that's like, I don't know, 12 layers high and you're cutting it with a saber. A lot of cultural traditions come in and representing that. So it's a really interesting time to get married. And it doesn't mean that bigger is better. Like, I gravitate towards intimate and cozy and meaningful. And a lot of people are into that. It's a generational shift we're seeing happening. Gen Z is starting to get married. They have a different perspective than millennials did. For Gen Z, a lot of them like a small wedding because it's cost effective and they're mindful of their spending. They're also mindful of sustainability. And a lot of people don't really, for as many people as we talk about that want to be a social media star, there's just as many or more that want to just don't have all that attention on them because a wedding, all eyes are on you. That's a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm. And then it does seem like performance.
Exactly.
I'm curious, having been the editor of a wedding magazine and choosing
Mm-hmm.
to have that intimate ceremony, was that
Mm-hmm.
partly because you could see, okay, it's not all about the frills. Like in the magazine, of course, you would focus a lot on all the different layers of frills around a wedding. what was it that made you, apart from your own, views with you and your husband, I'm sure, what was it that made intimate the right style for you?
It was really about who we are as people. Like we are those people who, having, for myself personally, having a career that was fairly forward facing and public and full of, events and amazing things. I like to have my private side to me, and I like to have, and I think, especially now we're talking like privacy is really our last luxury, right? It's allowing ourselves to have those moments that are just for us. So it really had nothing to do with what I saw in my job. I loved seeing how people celebrate. I love, small, I love large, I love over the top weddings. They all have a place, but it's really about what's the fit for you. And that was the reason for me.
What are some of the most interesting, and that can also be bizarre or it can be intriguing, any adjective you like, weddings that you have covered or seen over the years?
Wow, so many. I really love the weddings that, there's the ones that are completely over the top, that have the incredible details, the floral installations, the no expenses spared. We're into the era of the wedding wardrobe. So it's like where the bride and groom have multiple outfits for the day. But I love those weddings. The weddings that always resonate with me are the ones that have a real connection back to family, and sort of something about that. I did a wedding for the Kit, who I work with, and it was actually one of the editors at the time that worked at the Kit, and she wore her grandmother's wedding dress that was over 100 years old, which is really incredible. And it actually, didn't need a ton of restoration to it. It had been sort of saved and kept in amazing condition, and just the story. She had an amazing story behind all of that and how meaningful it was, and those are the things that resonate with me.
This podcast is made possible by the support of Charm Diamond Centers. As a proudly Canadian-owned company, they care deeply about shining a light on love. And haven't there also been real sort of shifts in wedding attire? Like some people are really moving away from traditional wedding attire, whether it's the, very expected wedding dress or for the whole party. What are you seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. You can pretty much get married in anything you want. Anything goes. I'm seeing, I'm going to tell you, just back to talking about the influence of vintage. Vintage is so huge right now, specifically with brides. It is, again, going back to having, there's a storytelling that comes with that. And people are very into the nostalgia right now, and they love things that have stories behind them, whether it's jewelry or it's fashion. And it's really interesting, like that vintage has become so huge. And, a lot of bridal designers now, that's one of the biggest trends, is like a vintage influence. But, the current generation takes it a step further, and they want those dresses from the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, whatever your vibe is. And it's really incredible how these have come to be such a huge thing. Like, we've seen celebrities do it. And, when we see that celebrity culture doing it, we know that it always trickles down quite quickly into our own realm. And that's really interesting, a fashion story. But yeah, people are, getting married in suits, pantsuits, jumpsuits. The grooms are really having fun with their fashion, which is really great. They're experimenting with color and silhouettes, and decades again are big. Like the 70s is really huge. So it's kind of anything goes, which is super fun.
Mm-hmm. When you work with the Kit, and that's a social media platform, right? Is it
the Kit's part of it's a media platform. It's part of the Toronto Star Group. Yes.
Okay. So you give advice sometimes to people, correct?
Sometimes I do. Yes.
And how, what sort of advice are people usually looking for around the subject of marriage? Or weddings, I guess.
Or weddings. Well, around the subject of weddings, etiquette is always, there's always something to talk about with etiquette. There was one reader that we had a question come in for, saying, do I have to invite my mother to my wedding because we've had a toxic relationship? So that was interesting to tackle.
Yeah.
Obviously, I went to a professional for that, a behavioral therapist, to sort of say, how do you tackle this? And, what do we say? But, these are the questions. There's a lot of questions about family, about dynamics, about who gets invited. Budget, of course, is a huge one, because overspending on a wedding can go off the rails pretty quickly. And of course, lots of fashion advice. People want to know what to wear to a wedding, because it's not only the couple getting married whose fashion has really become sort of elevated and a fun thing. Guest dressing is a big thing now. Theming of weddings is huge. So a lot of people are served guest mood boards before they go to a wedding to sort of give them some inspo on what to wear. So yeah, lots of weddings come with tons of questions, don't they?
Oh, I have to do another timeout on that. What is a wedding mood board?
A wedding guest mood board?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So people put together like fashion mood boards, and they usually include them on their wedding website. And, I don't know, say you're having a wedding and it has a theme of, Western chic, I'm going to say, because the Western cowboy theme was big for a while. So just putting together, outfit ideas for the guests. So you can sort of have an idea of what that dress code means, because, people want like the guests to come with a cohesive look, because again, it feeds back into the image, it feeds back into the imagery and the content. You see where I'm going here.
Social media plays a big role in weddings today, doesn't it? I'm going to go back
Massive.
to that.
It does. That's where people find their ideas. They, post all of their, they post it all up after the wedding, and which can get into another question of, who's posting that content first. You allow, a lot of couples don't want guests to post content before they do. Lots of stuff, Nancy.
So excuse the pun, but is social media part of weddings for better or for worse?
Well, it's a slippery slope, isn't it? It's a bit of a double-edged sword. I mean, I think a bit of both. I always, again, like to see the better in things, but you just have to be able to keep things in perspective and realize, what that social media component, how it's driving you, and if it's driving you a little over the edge when you're doing your planning.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Weddings have become such an industry, certainly since I got married for the first time way back in 1994. There has just been a tectonic shift of how weddings are approached. And I wonder, is it more about excitement, or is it more about pressure and anxiety when it comes down to it for the people involved?
Probably a little bit of both. I would say, for sure. I think that social media and also celebrity culture, as we talked a little bit about, drives that massively. And I just was reading something the other day about we can expect sort of weddings and the way they look and the way the industry rolls to kind of have another sort of shift with the Taylor Swift and Travis engagement and impending wedding. Selena Gomez is a great example of a celebrity wedding we just saw recently, who I loved what Selena did, because she didn't have her content on any other platform except her own. We didn't see it picked up by Vogue or a media outlet. Like, she did a slow drip and continues to do a slow drip of, reveals about her day, which I thought was really interesting.
Well, it does say a lot. I did not even know she had already gotten married. And I watch Only Murders in the Building, which, of course, Selena is in. And so I have her on my radar. But I kind of loved the fact that I realized after the fact she had gotten married and it hadn't been splashed everywhere.
Right. It was interesting the way that she rolled that out, and she took ownership of that content. So again, that was a big one, but I'm curious when Taylor and Travis get married again, that's going to set huge trends, whatever she wears. I mean, the ring in itself, that was like the biggest story for days.
And the biggest ring.
And the biggest ring. Well, not quite the biggest. We had like a 30 carat one before that one with an engagement. But yeah, it was still talking about it. It's so impactful. It was such a moment.
So,
Not since like Princess Diana's ring.
yes. So what do you see on the horizon? If you were looking into your wedding crystal ball, what do you think will be the future trend?
I think that couples will continue to do weddings their way. I do think small will continue for a lot of people to be the way. And again, when we talk about the size of weddings, another thing impacting it is people want to have money to enjoy those life experiences because travel is important and all of that. So I think that weddings, they're going to continue to be on an up trajectory. They're going to continue to gain momentum. They're going to continue to be like they really have found their groove on the social platforms. And I think it's great. But again, it's sort of keeping real about it all. And as if you're at that phase in your life where you're engaged and you're going to get on with the next phase of wedding planning, just ground yourself and enjoy your engagement. That's another thing. Like, just take the time and enjoy that time together.
Well, you almost took the words out of my mouth, because I wanted to ask you, what advice do you have for not just young people, people of any age who have just gotten engaged? If you catch them right then, what is your best advice?
Take the time, like enjoy being engaged, because that's an amazing life moment. And for some people it's short, for some people it's a little longer, or for some people it's years and years, and maybe they actually never do actually tie the knot, but they're engaged. It's a special time, and it's a moment for you to kind of just have that phase of your relationship. And I think it's really important.
How has your podcast shaped your perspective on weddings?
Yeah, it's interesting. My podcast is really for people who are, getting engaged or, on the verge of wedding planning. It's also great for industry pros. I've had lots of amazing people on there, a few celebrities. I had India Hicks on after she got married. She talked about her wedding. She was with her partner for years and years, and she decided in COVID that they should get married. And that was a really fun story for her to share, because, again, she was Princess Diana's bridesmaid back in the day, and when she got married to Prince Charles. So the podcast is really, again, just pointed out to me, like, one of the questions I always ask guests is, what do people love about weddings? And it really comes back to what we're talking about, this moment between two people and the relationship between two people, and that specialness. And that's the connect. People really like that. And during COVID, when we couldn't connect, people still had the tiny weddings, but they had the celebrations after because they missed everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I do think that young people, you mentioned travel, and young people today are really valuing travel very much. They'd rather have life-work balance and be able to do more travel than to have a more serious job. And that must tie into the wedding scheme as well. I'm curious to ask you, before I let you go, to tell me a few ideas that you have seen done at weddings that are just completely original and eye-catching.
There was one wedding that it was a few years ago that I covered, and it was a couple in Quebec City. They got married, and they had a super fun wedding because they were very whimsical people. And I don't know where they sort of found these costumes, but they all sort of had like whimsical animal heads on. And they had a parade through this alleyway, the cobble streets in Quebec. It was so different and so creative. I just loved that. So these are the things that I love when I see people getting super creative, in the space of their wedding and really expressing who they are. Like, the photos from this wedding were amazing. And then the social content was great too. But just, I like that outside of the boxness. And that's what everybody really wants. They want a super personal, very, individual celebration of themselves in their weddings. And so I think that's the main driver happening right now. And whatever that looks like for you, embrace it and figure it out and spin it into your wedding day, because guests love it and you love it too.
And that's it. It's about the guests loving it. And if the guests are going to love it, it's got to have something a little bit different and a lot memorable.
Absolutely.
Right? You want
Yep.
people to remember your wedding as different from all those other weddings that they go to.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like every great party you walk away, people always remember if the food was great, if it wasn't so great, and they remember what kind of time they had at the party. And I mean, the guest experience has become super, super important right now in modern weddings. And I think it's great because it's really thinking about how you're going to make that different, how you're going to make a personal impact. And, it just makes for an amazing party.
What's the future for you? And will you continue to focus on weddings? And if so, how will it shift, do you think, to keep it interesting for yourself?
I don't know. It's kind of a sort of a road that unfolds, isn't it? So yes, weddings will continue to be a focus for me. I've sort of been in wedding media for so long. I just love it. I really enjoy it. And it's really something that is fulfilling. And like I said, it's a joyful content area, which is, I feel fortunate that I get to deal in every day. So I'm curious to see how weddings continue to evolve. I mean, how are we heading into 2026? That is just wild to me. And, couples are already planning ahead for like 2027, 2028 weddings. It will be interesting to see how things roll along. And I'm curious to see how they continue to evolve, because that's exactly what it is. Weddings are evolving at a great pace right now.
Well, thank you for your spotlight on love. And, I think it's great that you share something that is really entertaining for people, but also, as you say, beautiful and positive and really based in connection.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Alison.
Thanks, Nancy.
Thanks to Charm Diamond Centers, the Canadian Love Map podcast has been sharing the stories that shape us for 10 seasons. Tales of romance, resilience, family, friendship, and community from every corner of Canada. This is Charm's Canadian Love Map.